Good afternoon, everybody, from wherever you are. I'm Rosanna Norman from GÉANT, and welcome to the first of our 4 free webinars for the 2023 Cybersecurity Month campaign, Become a Cyber Hero. Cybersecurity Month is an initiative launched by ENISA, which is the European Agency for Cybersecurity. But for those of you who are not familiar with GÉANT, it's just a little background. GÉANT is the organization that delivers a worldwide network and a portfolio of services for research and education. It operates a pan-European e-infrastructure called the GÉANT network and runs a membership association for Europe's national research and education networks. And it's called, in fact, the GÉANT Association. So along the 4 free webinars this year, the program includes brand new material such as videos and in-depth interviews with experts from the international research and education community, because collaboration and information sharing are at the heart of our community, and we believe that together we can make a difference and improve our resilience against in a fight against cybercrime. So, but going back to our campaign, are you familiar with the adventures of Granny Smith? Well, Granny Smith features the fictional 4-part vlog animation, which is called Cybercrime for Newbies. And these animations will show how hackers operate, giving an insight into their mindset. But our cyber heroes in their videos will give tips on how to outsmart hackers. So each week, we'll release an episode of Granny Smith's Adventures, which will be addressing the following topics. On the first week, which is the week that has just started, we're covering online privacy, data protection, digital footprint. On the second week, we cover phishing. On week 3, social engineering, ransomware, and backups. And on week 4, reporting on cyber incidents and knowledge sharing within the community. But coming back to our webinars, this will be held by security experts from industry and the wider GÉANT community. And also this year, we welcome the collaboration with Red Clara, which is GÉANT's counterpart organization for Latin America, which comprises the availability of live interpretation services in 3 languages, in fact, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So do check the interpretation globe at the bottom of the screen and choose the language, select your language. But for today's webinar, we are very delighted to welcome Kieren Lovell, and who has extensive experience from academia. He worked at universities of Cambridge as a head of CERT and Tallinn in Estonia. So his presentation, which is the state of information security in universities, starts from the observation that notwithstanding universities have the potential to disrupt the cybersecurity landscape today, most of them keep looking outside for solutions which can be costly and miss the opportunity to take advantage of the potential of their in-house expertise. But I will not go further because this is the time for Kieren to take the center stage and let you know that the webinar will last 1 hour, including 15 minutes of Q&A. So please use the Q&A function in the chat and just happy listening. And Kieren, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. And yes, it's an absolute pleasure again to be presenting for GÉANT, and always a pleasure to work with you as well. So what are we talking about? And the most important thing is for us to actually explore how information security in universities, actually how we work together, and how we can work together not only within our universities, but within broader scopes, nationally, internationally, and also use the limited resources we've got. So we'll cover the problem that I used to have as a computer emergency response team leader, and the problem I have now with my work as doing academic and research aspects, and the solution approach that we've got that we have used commercially in a university level and in a way that we could cross the department, and what we could do for the future. First of all, I always have to start with every presentation with a little bit of an apology, which is I am an incredibly strange person. So I started my career, not in cybersecurity. I was on HMS Vengeance, which is a nuclear ballistic missile submarine for the Royal Navy. And I did about 3 to 4 months underwater for 2 years, sleeping between number 3 and number 4 nuclear missile tube. So I decided after 2 years I would like to do something slightly less dangerous. So I went into bomb disposal and mine warfare for 5 years, but slowly doing it in IT and then going into cybersecurity. And back in 2009, I won an award in the UK for the Royal Navy from Princess Anne for services to the Crown for coming up with the MILCOMS Guide, the SOP manual for the Royal Navy for cybersecurity. That is when the Royal Norwegian Navy decided to give me a call and said, would you like to work for us? I said, no, I'm loyal to the Queen. They said, we'll pay you 3 times as much. I said, long live the King. And I moved over to the Norwegian Navy and initially teaching at the frigate weapon. And then I ended up being the Chief Information Security Officer for 6 warships in Somalia. And the Battle Watch Captain during the day, and a CISO in the evening, and occasionally I slept. I then decided that I wanted to do something slightly less dangerous again, so I wanted to see what proper psychological warfare is like, so I became a head of computer emergency response at the University of Cambridge. And getting into the academic way of actually how to both respond and protect while also being flexible enough to make sure that research continues. I then decided to continue my journey, and I became moved over to Estonia, set up the Taltech CERT, which was the first attempt at trying to bring this idea on of that we'll discuss today, and also joined a company, Pipedrive, which also used a lot of these open source ideas and structures as well. For now, I work as head of CERT for a company called BV Group here in sunny Gibraltar, because while Estonia is lovely, the weather is definitely better down here. I still teach in the summer at Pembroke College at the University of Cambridge. I also teach incident response at Cranfield, and I also work with a startup company called Census Q, which I won't talk about today because as we're mainly focusing on open source CERT. So what's the problem? The problem is within universities as a whole is we have a lot of data that we need to get. And within cybersecurity, let's be honest, we're not finding a needle in a haystack. We're trying to find needles in, trying to find a hay in a needle stack. The reason it's so complicated is not just only because of threats have increased, but obviously so have our personnel count and so have our devices. You can just see, even if you go back to 2004, 2005, most people had one device. So if you had a university size of 60,000, you only had 60,000 devices that you needed to protect. Now most people have smartwatches. They have multiple watches, multiple phones, multiple laptops, gaming consoles, and all of them are stuck on your network. And most of the fixes for this generally come from what I like to call the cybersecurity magic boxes. Lovely vendors coming up to tell you that they can solve all of your issues 100%. I even read the other day of someone saying that their solution stops 100% of phishing emails, which I am assuming if it stops 100% of them, they just turn your email server off and stop all email, because phishing and spear phishing and mailing are slightly more complicated. You can limit it, but you definitely can't get rid of it. But most of those solutions, even when they do work, they're trying to cover a different type of landscape. And we have a big problem with that. But this is something that's not new. And I'm going to diverge a little bit for a moment now and actually just talk about how sometimes history does repeat. And if you go back into 1944, from an operational aspect with the when they were first trying to communicate using digital networks, using the wireless networks as they were, Morse code and telex, they basically had about 10,000 administrators, radio operators, key people with Morse code, responsible for the movement and information flow of 250,000 people. And we would assume that information management has got a lot better in this regard. But it hasn't. It's got a lot worse. And we can see this comparison problem quite clearly, actually, when we compare from my military days, 2 different operations of how things have changed in the way that you wouldn't think. So back in 1944, with Britain organizing 250,000 people, with lots of all of the allied nations, with 10,000 people, with 70 board, the average time it took to deal with an emergency or an incident was 15 minutes. Roll on Afghanistan in 2014, we had 10,000 people, 86,000 administrators managing those 10,000 people. The average speed was 1.8 megabit on a SATCOM, which is a hell of a lot faster than 50 baud. But the average speed is 8 to 12 hours. The technology's got better. The bandwidth has got better. Our ability to fill that bandwidth has also got a lot better. And this is part of the problem that we have within a university. We are drowning in data that's not being processed, and these need to go through malware analytical tools. They need to go through an ability for actually understand. Data is useless. We need to turn it into information and then turn it into actionable intelligence. And let's be fair, within universities amongst ourselves, the risk team talk to compliance, but they might not really be very close with the incident response team. The CISO may be very separated as well. The help desk is generally in an operational team. And the users are sometimes not entirely interpreted of who the user is. Sometimes, students, researchers, they all are given a different level of category in a lot of places of how we would respect and treat them. But let's be very clear, a threat actor only needs to find a single weakness, and collectively, we have quite a few as an organization. But we also have a research problem. And more research that is coming out of universities is quite far behind, especially if it comes to vulnerability assessments. We are lagging. More and more, a lot of these 0 days that are coming out, less of it is coming from universities, not only due to our review process and peer review and the way that we actually approach research, but it's also because they don't have access to data. And it's incredibly hard to do research when you have no data to actually conduct your analysis and conduct your hypothesis to work with. So most of the data sets that a lot of the researchers are using are either older or they're not significantly significant in order to work with. So we're actually fighting or finding research problems that might be slightly out of date. And this kind of sets a bit of an issue, because both of our problems are the same solution. Researchers desperately need data. We desperately need people to look at our data in order to make it actionable information. And this data that we do collect as a CERT or as a researcher, there's a good reason that university data is absolutely fantastic. And it is because universities are amazingly unique. We are both simultaneously having really secure areas like the finance department, or those where they've got walled gardens, they've got the traditional firewall approach, MFA, and we have thousands of students which are using it exactly as their home connection. So you've also got academics which are purely focused on their task or their research and definitely not on security. And you've got all of these different types of mixtures. It's a bit like a mini country. Really, you've got a huge data set. If you remember, whenever I look back at my time when I was head of computer emergency response at Cambridge University, our network alone was the biggest private digital network in Europe, and it was a mess. It's a very big networked mini country, And this research data and the way that we approach this, we should really open up to each other, but obviously do it in a secure fashion and do it in a way where we can contribute to ourselves. So while I'll talk a little bit about the stack, I'm on purposely going to be the type of person that says, I will do what I want. So for those that want to understand exactly how we technically set everything up, please email me and we'll give it to you. So all of the stuff, full manual, full everything, in order to how to set up, lessons learned, what worked, what didn't work, and give you the whole matrix of how to basically set up your computer emergency response SOC team in a box. But I'll just kind of talk about the general areas of what we cover. So for the open source SOAR and SIEM solutions, we use the Hive, Cortex, and Elastic Stack in a Kubernetes cluster. And for those that don't know what those terms are, they're open source versions of things that will basically collect and do all of our incident response management for all of our network, as well as taking in all of our log analytics and actually displaying it in an actionable way, so our computer emergency response team can react on it. We also use Cuckoo, which, while hasn't received so many updates, we isolate it and we'll give the instructions to make sure how we can set it up in a secure way. And this is particularly helpful for us. For those that don't know, Cuckoo is an open source email detonation service where you upload a piece of malware. It will then open up the operating system, provide human interaction or simulated human interaction, activate it, and then extract from it everything that it does. So network calls, where it all goes out to. And then from that, we can then see very quickly if it's just something that doesn't require advanced malware analytics, signatures, indicators of compromise, and everything we can feed back. It's great for us because we then, of course, use this in a way that we incorporate and protect ourselves, update VirusTotal and help everybody else. But it also gives a lot of indicators of compromise and data sets for researchers that would love it. We also use MISP, and if you don't use MISP, do use MISP. Universities should be using this. It is a malware intelligence sharing platform. It makes a lot of sense. All of these are obviously freely available. You just need to set them up on your infrastructure and then connect them out. But the bits that we don't really talk about is, of course, we have in universities a tale of two cities. We do have the students and the researchers, which generally are using any of the tools and facilities that they want. And then we have the secure area. The good thing is most secure areas are still using proprietary products like Sentinel, which is the Microsoft Office Azure solution in order to provide protection for corporate and enterprise laptops. This feed works directly with all of the stack above. We can feed that straight into there and actually have more using the same infrastructure and the same target and same ability to see the overview of what's happening in the university. It works. So we can pipe all of the Sentinel incidents and events straight into the sort of scene, which really enriches the data for us, and we can better see the targets. But it also works incredibly well with the Google Cloud Platform, AWS, and of course the Azure login if you're using the Azure platform. And last but never least, one of the greatest bits of collaboration that have worked with universities is with SAML and the ability to authenticate across all universities. Those logs are equally beautiful as well for coming to enrich and give us the ability to really drill down and see what it is. And when we have all of these logs, you can really start to see how we can get it. Because if we have an event, we can get the intelligence, we can get where it was coming from, who they were targeting. We can then strip it of any personal data from our targets, distribute it on a malware intelligence sharing platform, and boom. For our universities, if we're all using a very similar model, we can then collaborate ourselves in a much more Hive-type manner. An attack against one is an attack against all of us, and therefore we mitigate and start to update all of our indicators of compromise, which will give us, as a university part within Europe, a much better oversight and understanding and better way to approach this. Because at present, most universities do it in an individual basis. The computer emergency response teams have this data and don't really release it. If anything, they're scared of releasing it and they don't want to. And I generally always hear the same answer. But what about GDPR? Or as I like to call it, got to put her just to annoy people on GDPR. But obviously I love GDPR and GDPR makes a lot of sense. But of course it does state in section 49 in GDPR that you should be having a computer emergency response team. And the definition of a computer emergency response team can be opened up. And a good way of doing it is having your primary SOC, the paid for employees of the university, as a central core, and then a reserve, ones that you could have as specializations, so people that are in the university and need to conduct research. Then you can put them in the computer emergency response team as well. They can start researching some of the problems you have with your data sets, find out solutions of how to enrich this data and how to reduce your digital footprint. And this is a self-fulfilling prophecy in a good way. It means the computer emergency response team is always better improving themselves by working hand in hand with the researchers. That is, again, increasing and reducing, increasing your intelligence, but reducing your digital footprint. Now, of course, I'm not saying go do this straight away and don't talk to your data protection officer, because I'm pretty sure your data protection officer will have a heart attack. But you'll need to do a DPIA and you'll need to think about it and you'll need to work out how to share. But working out how to do this is vitally important. But this is just, of course, sharing it amongst yourself. What we also need to look at doing better, though, is sharing outside of universities. And this is equally as challenging, to be honest. Most people like to not consolidate and work in a way. They normally work with one or two, and we shouldn't. We should work with lots of them. And things like MISP are a very easy way of doing it. But also using forums like this is excellent, of people to come out, discuss actually what's happening, and do it in a Chatham House way, of where we talk about it with no blame and actually really break down the silo, so we don't all just suffer in silence. So what's the benefits of using our stack? Well, in using the Hive, in using Cortex, in using Elasticstack, and in using MISP and Cuckoo and our information sharing platform, it will seriously increase your research capabilities for the university. It gives your computing science and cybersecurity departments actual data to use, which is real life as well. It's not synthetic and actually has, of course it will have issues, but at least it really works in a way of they get it in the format that they need, and they can do their normal data analytics and cleaning technologies as they do. But also, you don't have to run them in VMs. It works absolutely fine in Kubernetes. We do that, and it scales very, very, very easily. And it is so much cheaper. I'm talking ridiculously cheaper. For most, if you had like 10 to 15,000 users, you probably are looking in pounds wise, in terms of equipment and setup, between 20,000 if you're using a cloud provider to set up all of the structure that scales. But the good news is also there's no vendor lock-in. We've all had that as a university, where the first year's free, the drug dealer approach, as I call it, but the vendor lock-in issue is a lot harder by using open source technology, because we can, of course, extract our data out of it in a way that we can use another open source tool if needed. which gives us the flexibility to not only adapt and work, but also gives us the flexibility of when we're giving it to researchers that they can get our setup and not waste the time on setting up an infrastructure to try and collect this data, which I'm pretty sure most universities already do have a computer science department that will be setting this up and doing it in concurrent to try and get data. And we can take that burden away from them. They can focus on the exciting bit, which is doing the research and finding out trends, which will better inform us for the future. So rather than just me droning on and talking about the benefits of it, there are some tools that you can even use straight away, which require really little oversight in terms of setting it up. That will already improve your digital footprint overnight. And for those that haven't used it, this is an open source solution I'm about to demo now called SpiderFoot. It's available online. And you can very quickly see how easy some of this can be, but to utilize, and how the data that's freely available, if we do it in a scaled way, researchers would value it. Chief information security officers would really like to see it because they actually get to see what their real digital footprint is, opposed to what they assume it is, and gives you actionable data in a very quick way. So as if by magic, here is SpiderFoot. So for those that don't know, SpiderFoot is an open source toolkit that works, that it's very easily downloadable Python package and gives you this web front end like this. And what this tool does is it scans digital footprints from domains and then collects all of the data that it can about it. I'll talk a little bit about what type of data sets it collects in a minute, as I'll show it's quite extensive. And I think if I finish the list, we'll never finish this presentation. But just to show how easy it can be, we click a new scan. And let's type the name of this one. And just for demonstration purposes, I'll put myself. So scan name, very simple enough. And then we put in the different types of data, all footprint, investigate, and passive. And then what we do there is we pick one of these that we want to do. Passive, this is as you expect. Collect everything that you can, but don't make yourself known. Investigate, this is when you know the target is malicious, but you need more information, but it's trying to still keep you under the radar. Footprint, this is the one that you may want to do for yourself. And this, you just want to see the network perimeter and all of the identities and everything you've got from it. And then all, very slow. If you're running it on a laptop, it'll take a day, but it will collect everything it can possibly get, loud and proud, and then put it in a way that's very easy for you to see. And if I go to the required data, you can very easily see how much data this collects. So if it's got any exposed accounts on the site, any domains, whois credentials, IP addresses, web content, IPv6, emails that are registered, collected to this. If there's any Bitcoin wallets, so if it had ransomware, it would try and find the Bitcoin address so then it collect and extract from wherever it can, where it's been advertised, and also what funds it's been transferred to. If it's ever been blacklisted as an IP address, co-hosted sites that are still in the area where they may have jumped, compromised hashes for any users or any compromised passwords that are connected to that site, any credit card numbers on the dark web that it's managed to find and on the normal web, any dark web mention of any forums or hacker forums, it will try and collect, extract, and elaborate, and put all of this together in one, even IBAN address, leaked IP addresses, leaked sites that you have. it is quite extensive. And I always like it at the bottom Wikipedia page edits, because they generally do come up, and they're quite funny sometimes, because you realize that I probably should have Wikipedia'd myself, and you see some of the inevitable things. But if we go to scans here, I will pick one I was doing earlier. And this is a known scammer that we're currently working with. So it's a live incident case that we're going with. And as you can see, the power of it is collected a ridiculous amount of data against this person. And if you ran this against yourself, you can see a very broad picture of everything against yourself as a target. And you can see where our weak points come in. One of the most powerful parts is actually with the graph, because with the graph, you can then really see how each part fits into your digital footprint. So the way SpiderFoot displays it in this way is that it treats people, data sets, and computers and devices and network switches as nodes. They're all assets. And it puts it in a way of where you can see their relationship. So if you have a weak, say, leaked username and password that's leaked often, and it's from various sites, it will actually show you the impact, and you can follow it from that domain and chase to see how it's all interconnected together. This is particularly useful when you're doing it against yourself, because you start to see how the convergence that we have with our on-premise networks and using different cloud providers and different hosting services, and also in universities, we always know that some researchers set up some new and exciting boxes that they've stuck on their own home network or got their own private cloud. You start to actually see that if it is using company data or company resources or having connections, it will pop up on the map, which is incredibly useful for you to do as an audit in order to get some real proper oversight. It also covers the SS7 layer. So if you're trying to find a scammer that's going for you, or somebody that is really giving some helpful evidence that you need to collect against an attack, running this against their domain is particularly helpful, because you can collect a lot of data in this fashion, which maybe the researchers wouldn't have had access to. They would have just had previously phishing email was sent to university, someone clicked the email. This, you can give them context. University, this was a successful link. This was the malware. We've done the scan on the command and control host, and this is the map of everything we can find about it. So they may be able to see trends and an intelligence profile picture that would go better elsewhere. In terms of other extra settings in this, you do have to do a bit of setting up some APIs for some of the data extraction to make it worthwhile. It's definitely worth it. But once you've set it up, do it as an image, and then you can deploy as and when you want. So how I've done it before in the computer emergency response team is we set up one image as a VM cluster on a device, or you set it up as a Kubernetes one, set it up with all of the APIs. And then, of course, your team just have one front-end dashboard in order to connect. And then very early on, in a very couple of clicks, they can run a full scan against the target that gives you all of the data it can extract, a lovely map where it actually shows you how the information and these relationships actually work. And of course, you can export it in a way, in a lovely JSON, so they can, researchers are able to actually extract and work with this. That's only a quick crash course on it, but as you can see, there is a lot more power using open source technology now than previous. But it's not just the open source technology element I'm stressing, it's the concept of open source CERT, that we move on and break this silo barrier. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, we don't keep things away from hackers, and we definitely don't want people that aren't universities, but we can still share and make this a collaborative approach but doing it in a safe way by respecting people's privacy rights and PII data, and doing it in a clean way. But most of all, we need to bridge this gap. We really do need to help each other, and we should change the way we work. Most of us are responsible for a lot of compliance, and I'm not saying compliance is bad, but I'm saying we a lot of the time focus on paperwork and bureaucracy, or when we're trying to do open source solutions or infrastructure, we start from scratch. Same with incident response plans, same with threat data. And most of it is repetition, especially with SOC manuals. It's going to be the same everywhere 60% of the time. You should be focusing 40% of the time on the differences, but actually have these templates ready to go. Have lessons learned from infrastructures, actually share with us how we've set it up, what went right, what went wrong. And if we have problems, use communities like this and actually to get better work together. And of course, threat data. Don't just let it stay data. Turn it into intelligence, share it to everybody else in universities, and actually don't suffer in silence. Make sure that if something is happening, other universities and other computer emergency response teams actually know about it. And there's a good reason why we've really not done this in the past. A lot of best practice within cybersecurity training, a lot of you will have heard the term need to know. The need to know with policy, and it's, on most of the standards, ISO 27001, NIST, there's big stress need to know. The problem is most people don't read the next sentence after it, which is a responsibility to share. And we skip that bit. We focus very much on the C, and we kind of sometimes forget the I and the A. And we should be focused on all three pillars, as we know. We always preach it. We don't really do it. And we should change to this mindset of, if I do have a threat and I know that our university has been hit or our researchers have been hit, it should be our duty to share this to other people so they can mitigate themselves, so they can be prepared for the attack if it ever happens to them. And of course, that is availability. That is making sure that we are protecting the availability of others. I'm pretty sure it's not going to stop at all incidents. We'll always have incidents, but it may stop one. And I don't think there's anything more ethical than that, than actually somebody stopping somebody else's, or them stopping you as well. So what's the fix? Well, the fix is, I do think we've got to move away as universities from having a look at these security magic boxes. Most people here on this call that have, and we've all done it, where you go down to the commercial cybersecurity box, you get the firewall, the Cisco Power or whatever the type of firewall that you get, or you get the IDS solution, you get it, it's very expensive log analytical tools. But all you do is your budgets keep getting bigger and bigger, and the next time you have a new cybersecurity issue, you have to buy a new tool to do it because the other one didn't work. And it's just not scalable. The university data sets are going to go through the roof. More students, more research data. Data is power. It's not something that I think most solutions are made for enterprise, large, small, or medium businesses. We're not a large business. We're a large business that takes all of our kindergarten kids home with us and let them do it because it is such a broad and wide network. But while we're doing this, we're also not giving the data to our researchers, and we're also not letting researchers get some real world experience in a computer emergency response team. So we should be weaponizing these things on our university to bridge this gap. But we also need to be creative. We need to look at, to start moving forward in terms of how we approach cyber risk, rather than just blaming users or buying a tool. We need to start to accurately get the big, large data sets that we do have and start doing some modeling and predict what's going to happen next and work out how we can try and get that to that stage. We're also, universities aren't the world's richest organizations. We have to reduce costs. Some of the tools that have started to be brought in recently, I know it's getting incredibly hard to convince a board that you desperately need this tool to mitigate this threat, when the cost of it can cost more than some ransomware attacks. We have to find alternative ways of doing this to take our vast data set as a network and scale it. We do need to reduce vendor lock-in. We've all been caught by that. First month free, first year free, and then 3-4 years down the line, you can't get out of it, you can't export, and it's a big move to do it. We should also, these tools for the open source community are excellent, but they're also, they need help as well. And the researchers that we have with us, our operational capabilities, we can all contribute to the open source community and make these tool sets that are freely available for everyone and quite mature. We should contribute to them. And we cannot really say that we don't do this, because we did it with Moodle. And with Moodle, it became the cybersecurity framework. It became the learning platform for all universities and higher education. Moodle was very popular as an open source stack that was heavily contributed by both the open source community and academia. And we should start to make our open source computer emergency response solutions the Moodle of cybersecurity frameworks. Have that passion and that ability to not only improve it, make it work, and make it perform better, but also to take the researchers that we have with us to feed it to make it even more advanced. And if we use our resources internally and actually start using our researchers actually in a safe and professional way and break down our silos and move to the responsibility to share model, we'll definitely be one step behind the hackers. No doubt about that. But that's damn sight better than being behind 10 steps, which is currently where I think a lot of us do feel in as a computer emergency response team member, or as anybody involved in cybersecurity. We need to move away from always reacting to an incident to being more proactive. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kieren. It's a very relevant presentation and really very useful to all of us. And you mentioned collaboration, sharing, you talk about open source, referring to data set management. So these are words that are very much we are very familiar with in the speaker language. You talk about the mindset change needed, and to this effect, I have a question. Do you have any examples or success stories where this mindset change is taking place, or where the departmental silos are being broken, or it's just a utopia?
No, it definitely started to happen when I was at Caltech, Italian University. We got established. We got the whole stack working, and actually got that change of where the computer emergency response team at Caltech was ran by the cybersecurity researchers team, and they had a professional one within it that was also run by there. So yeah, it works, and it does give the data that we also definitely need.
Thank you so much. But I have some, we have some questions in the chat. So I'm going to read them out loud, and I've got some comments. Let me see. Let me go back to the beginning where I see a message from Michele Pinassi, I think, where he said the real problem is to have enough resources, both economical or human, to face these threats. In Italy, for instance, the median wage for IT technician is so low that experts choose to work elsewhere. So he has added another comment. Moreover, C-levels doesn't seem to understand the importance of IT in university. So resources are constantly lowered. The future seems to be very hard. And obviously, compliments, a lot of congratulations and compliments for your presentation. Do you want to do you have any counter comment to the comment that was raised by Michele?
No, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I can't argue. In terms of and in a way that this is a response to try and raise to it. You have researchers that are looking for data, and you definitely need people. And it is the problem that we all have across all of Europe, is the salaries are low, but the work is hard, which is never a good thing to have on a job advert. But you can alleviate it with some of the automation by using open source, and you can alleviate it by bringing some of these researchers on and help in a way that they could start to collaborate. Now, they're not going to help do your job 100%. That's not going to happen. What they can do, though, is by collaborating and doing targeted research, is help you know where to automate. And that is something that we don't need so much. We need help to know where to look. And I think at the moment, what we do is there's so much going on for IT teams across all of Europe that we do it in a way of where we can't prioritize because we can't see. And so we just do the first thing that comes in and panic about it and go from 1 0 day to another. And I understand that. And the only way we can do that is that I've seen, and it worked in Tallinn, and it also works in the business that I'm in at the moment. We use the same open source solution here, and it saves us a lot of money. It also pushes us to be better and more ethical in doing reporting threats to increase the wider internet. It does work, but you do have to put a lot of effort in to get started, which is why if anybody would like to contact me directly afterwards on LinkedIn or anything, and if they want me to share it, I am in the process of setting up a site. I will give you all the SOPs. I will give you all of the documentation. I will give you my infrastructure designs, just obviously not with the usernames and passwords, and definitely not my setup. But I will give you the way that you can approach this, so it's not such a daunting task. Because yeah, it is hard.
Well, that's very kind and very much in the spirit of collaboration. So we have another question, another comment. It's a great presentation, very inspiring. And can I ask Joost Achterhoek, I'm not sure if I pronounce Achterhoek. Can I ask, where did you start from? Were you vendor locked in for your SIEM EDR?
Yes, I have experienced vendor lock-in with my SIEM. However, I think I would rather name a drug dealer in a public chat than I would a cybersecurity large company. So, but yes, I have had lock-in, and that lock-in is really seriously problematic. More and more, this is happening of where. Not only they lock it, it's not only lock-in because prices go up, but it's lock-in in other ways. If I can't extract that data, I can't give it to researchers. Or even if you wanted to do research yourself to start seeing trends, it's all look at the dashboard I give you. And I have a big problem with looking at the dashboard I give you because, like all cybersecurity products, it's in their interest to make threats look like they're going up. Because it has to kind of show itself that it's going better. And you'll notice this in a lot of the products. You can use their dashboards. It's not really drilled down, but it's basically telling you everything's on fire. If you don't use this tool, everything would break, which isn't very helpful for you because for example, a lot of the firewall dashboards, you look at it and go 7,000, 8,000 of those are just web scans that are irrelevant. They would have just not made a difference in the first place. But it's not in their intensive to do that. They would still classify them as moderate or low, just to keep them filled out. For the C-suite question as well, I noticed on earlier, convincing them, I've never been able to 100% convince them, of course, but I think the best way I've done it is by tabletoping and actually, but doing real-time tabletop exercises. I have, if anybody wants that, I have an academic paper where I wrote how to do real-time tabletop exercises like we did in the Royal Navy in a university lab. I'm more than happy to share that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I was about to say, for whoever wants to ask a question, raise their hand, and we will unmute. Will be unmuted. But in the meanwhile, I've received another question from Michele. Allora, one of the most controversial topics nowadays is to block or not Tor traffic. More specifically, traffic from Tor exit nodes. What do you think about this? What does Tor stand for?
So Tor is the Onion network. So the Onion router, where it's used in order to connect up as an exit node for dark web. So you can then connect up and pop up somewhere randomly in the planet and protect your identity. A very good question. I'll give my opinion, but I'll also caveat it with you have to come up with a policy that fits your university. I'll give my opinion, but there's two extra aspects. The reason why I have it in this way, a lot of universities have their own Tor exit node. And they have their own node for good reasons. They're doing research on Tor. So if we block it, then we stop their primary research data set. So that's it. But also from Tor point of view is, in a lot of cases, for certain types of researchers, I used to recommend it. If you're doing research of where you want the person to be protected for, because they're doing political studies or anything, it would happen. Of course, you've got political departments in the universities. There's so much research done. I think you might get drowned out by the criminal side in terms of research and other areas that actually do really need it, or doing it to bypass certain other security tools that we need for research. So there's that one side, safety for certain people, research for others. But the other side is I'm not really too pro just blocking it randomly. And not understanding the root cause, because just because somebody is coming from a Tor exit node doesn't necessarily mean that it's, that's not the root cause of the problem. The root cause is they either came from Tor exit node and your firewalls weren't set up, or there's a vulnerability in that stack that's been exploited, or many other things. The problem is actually dealing with the infrastructure as a problem, as a side. And this is where kind of the crux of the issue I always have with open source, the open source CERT idea, is we actually don't want, we spend a lot of money on cybersecurity tools, nice firewalls, nice IDSs, and then we have IT departments that are running on 5-year-old servers, 6-year-old servers, because they've got no money to receive security patches. They've got no money to update hardware, or to increase their cloud, or to increase their licenses, or to increase anything like that. So why do we do that? Why do we give all of the money to the cybersecurity team and then don't give any money to the IT teams that actually need to be functioning? The cybersecurity team doesn't actually work in that way. Because we should be better making IT departments protected.
Questions keep coming in, and I have another one from Tommy Thompson, and ask a question about SpiderFoot. Does SpiderFoot as internal vulnerability database, or some external one, or an external one is used?
Sorry, do you mind saying that again? It cut out.
Yeah, no problem. So that's a question from Tommy Thompson. That SpiderFoot has an internal vulnerability database or an external one can be used, is used?
Sorry, yes, very good question. And if I just looked to the right, I would have seen that.
No worries, no worries.
So,
I'm here for that.
You can use both. It does have an internal database, but you can also plug in via API any data sets you want as well. Its external one as well is updated. It does have a so even the internal one it doesn't use is external, but you can plug in an internal one as well. SpiderFoot's got some excellent documentation. If you're interested in it, definitely do look at reading and deploying it. It's one of the easiest open source CERT tools I've ever used. Python, couple of pip commands, and that's it. Straight into the front end, and you can really start collecting it. The only bit I would say is do go through the effort on the APIs.
Right.
And okay. So thank you. Really helpful sharing the link.
More questions coming through. I mean, I think we are. It's going so. There's so much interest that I'm going to read them all, and I think there's still a lot of people online. So we can ask another couple of questions. Could you briefly explain what is table topping? And I didn't quite catch the word. It's from Panagiotis.
Perfect.
Matamis.
A pleasure. So a tabletop is where you do an exercise and you practice with your C-suite normally how a cybersecurity incident would happen. So you put crisis training, basically. You do a crisis training and you test it. The problem is when we do this most of the time, it becomes a talking shop. So you get all of the C-suite round, you do a crisis, and then they all talk about how things are great or how things are rubbish, and we don't learn anything. So I'm more than happy to send, if you send me a LinkedIn, I'll send you a paper on it of how to set it up. But how we do it is do it in real time. So you get everybody in, you activate that there is a crisis. And then once you give them the first inject, as we call it, so this is what's happened, this is the devices, wait of 2 or 3 minutes, and then actually start throwing in injects. So inaction causes an effect. By not doing anything actually makes it worse. And there's 2 real primary key bits that I'm trying to push on here. One is it's not a problem making a bad decision. A bad decision is okay because you very quickly realize when you made a bad decision because it all goes wrong and you can correct yourself. Making no decision is the worst thing. If you make no decision, it just the crisis becomes part of you. But if you'd like, that I could do an entire talk on tabletopping and go from basics to advanced. So I won't talk about that too much now. But if you want any, contact me directly. I can share you the stuff, and I'll happily meet up with any of you. And in the other question with fantastic that you're using Cortex and Hive. You're definitely the right way, and Wazoo is fantastic. Love it. That's our next thing that we're going to be implementing. So
excellent,
great news.
So you've seen the latest question. I think that before we say goodbye, Leonardo, my colleague, is going to share a link to a survey, because obviously we want to improve all the time on the content and on our web programs of webinars. So if you could please complete that session, that survey would be lovely. And also there are links to the coming to the webinars that we'll be hosting for the next weeks during October. And there'll be going to be 1 webinar a week on a variety of other subjects, as I mentioned before. So take the opportunity to register, familiarize yourself with the content, and join us. And thanks. Keep an eye on the email address that Kieren has just shared, and also you can easily find him on LinkedIn. That's how I got in touch, in fact, with Kieren. So I think I've covered pretty much everything, and thank you very much again for your generosity, for the time you spent, and thanks for all the questions. And I see we still have 70 70 people online, which for us is a nice record. So all I can say is just make sure you complete the survey because it's important for us, and join us at the next webinars. And very much thank you again, Kieren, and see you soon. You never know.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.